Skylanders Trap Team was the first and the last game in the franchise to actually give the villains their own elements. And this whole situation ended up with a couple of elements having some really big issues, at least in my eyes. With the introduction of light and dark into a game that you're able to see all the villains from the start, but you're trying to keep this new element a secret, it became very confusing very fast. In this video, we're going to be discussing pretty much the outcome of all this and how it was actually executed, sort of messing up a lot of the villain designs for these two new elements, and how I would have handled this whole situation completely differently, which probably would have made it make a lot more sense in the end. So the light and dark elements were kept a secret for a bunch of Skylanders Trap Team's life cycle. They were not revealed to the public at all, and they actually did a decent job, I would say, keeping them a secret, but there were some drawbacks. One, it is pretty debatable how much of a secret they were, considering you could kind of just like go into the elemental gates in like the first level on day one and like kind of just see what the elements are. But with that being pushed to the side, the actual official reveal without using any in-game exploits or anything, I'm not sure exactly when it was. But since it wasn't on day one, there are these villains in the game that are going to be linked with these elements that haven't been revealed yet. This in and of itself, I think, was a bad idea. I think these villains should have been concealed, same as the Skylanders, until the elements were officially revealed. Because now we have these villains that are in the game of the light and the dark element, but it just says mystery element. And the thing with that is, if they were clearly light and dark themed, it would have given everything away. This led to some really bad designs for light and dark. A lot of them are, I wouldn't say bad, maybe that's the wrong word. A lot of these designs were decent, they just had no sort of theming to light and dark at all, and they were really just pushed in there kind of to confuse people and honestly make them wonder what these new elements were, which really made the roster for the villains for the new elements really bad in my opinion. This whole issue could have been fixed if they just revealed the villains and added them into the game with a new update same time as the light and dark elements came out, but I guess Activision just wasn't smart enough to do this or something. I feel like it's not that much of a mind-bending concept, but I don't know. Activision has made some stupid decisions in the past, so I wouldn't really put it past them to make this mistake again, which of course they ended up actually making. I know some people might say that these Skylanders backstories or whatever sort of give a reasoning for them being in these elements that don't really seem to fit them just based on design, but as someone who doesn't really look into the lore too much, you can clearly see how are you going to explain Lobgoblin being in the light element. He is just a troll like any other troll that throws bombs, and the bombs look like they have sort of like some sort of an electric effect. I really don't know how you're going to justify that being the light element. At least if you're asking me, it does not make sense. I do not think you can justify Lobgoblin being in the light element at all. Or you could look at Blastertron. Blastertron, I get it. Some people say like he has beams of light or something like that. Like he shoots light beams. Okay, that kind of makes sense. But just looking at this guy, he's a robot. He is tech element in my eyes. I think any day of the week you could say Blastertron is a tech element Skylander, tech element villain. And honestly, that'd be fine by me. And then you also have I-5 for the light element villains. And I-5, it's so random. I really have no clue why he's the light element. He doesn't really fit any element in general, but look at this guy's design. Put him in the undead or dark element, man. Like, light just does not make any sense. Even, like, magic would probably work better for this guy. Light, I don't know where this is coming from. Like, what, he has eyes that he can, like, see the light or something? Like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That does not make any sense. I really don't get the reason for the reasoning for him being light, other than trying to confuse people and make people sort of wonder what the new elements were. I think this was handled really poorly, if you ask me. And then there's Luminous, who, dude, look at this. Luminous, easily the coolest, in my opinion, of the light villains. Or, I would say this is pretty much, like, objectively speaking, he is 100% the most light-themed villain. And what did they do with him? He was a secret. He was pretty much completely concealed up until the release of these expansion packs and the light adventure packs and the light Skylanders and the new elements and all that, which meant he didn't have to hide his elements, so he actually looks like a light villain. And Luminous is one of the coolest villains because of that. And I would say out of pretty much all of light and dark, Luminous is really, he's so far up there for one of the coolest. Luminous is so awesome, such a cool design and such a cool personality, and it's all because they didn't have to put him in the main game, even though his element wasn't in the main game and say he was part of a mystery element. That just ruins it for me. I know I'm being repetitive, but it's a point that I really hate and something that does really bother me about the Trap Team villain roster for these elements. Then we look at the dark element, which is pretty much on the opposite side, but it's in the same situation. So first up, we have Ice Cream. I mean, Ice Cream doesn't really scream any element. Haha, that's a hilarious pun. But jokes aside, Ice Cream just doesn't really shout out, hey, I'm this element. She could be placed in a few. I think you could argue for a couple different elements. I personally think Undead would probably work the best, but I don't think Dark was that bad for her. But still, when you look at her, she's a case of a villain who just sort of looks evil and looks bad, and because of that, you would kind of put them into Dark element automatically unless they have some sort of theming that would actually make them make sense in another element. So I think Dark, just in general, as an element for villains, it is much easier to conceal that as being their element due to all of sort of the villains having a villainous nature in their design, which goes back to being sort of like the darkness. I mean, the darkness is the biggest villain of the entire series. So it's like this darkness, this dark energy is going to be in every single villain, which is a lot more easy to ignore. You could just think, oh, they're villainous, not really. Oh, that's a light element villain right there. But Ice Cream, I think, honestly, isn't actually that bad for Dark. Now, who is that bad for Dark is probably going to be Fisticuffs. This guy makes no sense in Dark. So you look at Shield Shredder, who is the same type of Evillican. Not the exact same like body type or whatever, but they're the same thing. They're Evillicans. They're evil Willikins. And this guy is the life element. Then you look at Scrap Shooter, and he is the fire element. Then you look at Krankenstein, who is found in Mystic Mill, and this guy is the air element. There's just, you can honestly give these guys any element, which is what Activision did, but I think it should have been all generalized to one. Like, more than anything, I almost feel like tech is what these guys should be. And especially for my guy Fisticuffs. He has this whole arm mechanism that really just looks like something that a tech villain would have. I have no clue why Fisticuffs is in the dark element. It just does not make sense to me. He's made out of wood, and he has a long, stretched out arm that can do some interesting stuff that would make it seem a lot more tech themed. Fisticuffs, I legitimately have no idea why he's in the dark element, because I really am not going to bother with reading any of the lore for this guy. I really could give you no answer. If you look at this guy's design and ask any non-Skylanders fan, give them the elements, or just a gamer, not a Skylanders fan. If you give them the elements and say, who do you think, which element do you think this guy belongs in? I do not think a single, if you asked 100 people, I would be surprised if a single one of them said dark. He does not look like a dark villain in the slightest. And then we get to Taekwon Crow, who honestly, I think he is passable as a dark villain. He's a bird, so a lot of people might think air, and his sort of coloring, the color scheme that he's got going on with the red and the yellow might make a lot of people think fire as well, which is eventually where he ended up in Imaginators. But as far as I'm concerned, this guy, I think dark kind of fits him well. Of course, it does go back to the same thing with Ice Cream, where this guy just has sort of a villainous, evil look to him, or not necessarily evil, maybe just like he has that sort of mischievous anti-hero design that I think honestly kind of just makes him work with the dark element. I think Taekwon Crow honestly worked really well with the dark element. I don't really think they need to swap his element, but of course you see this guy, he is like a ninja bird that has this like red and yellow and blue color scheme, and no one on Earth is saying, oh yeah, that looks like a dark element villain right there. No one is saying that. That's why I still think this guy did a good job of representing the dark element once it was revealed, while being able to sort of conceal what that element was before it got revealed. And then we get to almost the most frustrating one in this video, and that is Nightshade. Nightshade, okay, I could see people seeing this guy as the dark element, and because he was released with the level packs and the element reveals and the new Skylanders and all of that, Nightshade was kept a secret, so he wasn't shoved into the game needing to keep his element a secret. He just got to go into the game with everyone already knowing what element he was going to be, which means his design can clearly fit that element and it can stand out among all the other villains as being the main dark one. But somehow they messed this up. This guy feels like a magic villain. All of his sort of tricks and all his powers are related to this like magician and like almost like Mysterio, the Spider-Man villain. That is what this guy reminds me of. Nightshade he does not seem like dark at all. He seems far more like magic, if you ask me. So I don't know how they messed up that much. I mean, compare Nightshade's theming to the dark element to Luminous's theming to the light element. It is night and day, literally. No, dark and light. Yeah, that was another stupid pun. But if you know what I'm saying, like, Luminous fits the light element so much more than Nightshade does the dark element. Nightshade isn't as bad as some of the other ones on this list, like Fisticuffs or I-Fi, but still, he just does not stand out compared to Luminous especially. Luminous did it pretty much perfectly for the situation he was put in. Nightshade kind of messed it all up. A lot of people seem to often be confused why these villains are in these specific elements. So in this video, I just kind of did want to like give you guys a brief sort of history lesson on exactly why this ended up happening, as well as why it just does not make sense. But yes, these guys were put into the game where obviously players could see them while needing to conceal the new secret elements as best they could. So if you give one of the villains basically a design that very clearly shows what element they're going to be, people are going to be able to figure that out. Imagine if Luminous was randomly shoved into level 7 of Trap Team, and then you go up against him, you're like, wait, this has got to be the light element. That's basically what Activision didn't want to happen. But I do hope you guys did enjoy this video. It was pretty fun to make, and it's just something that I need to get out there, because I think this does confuse a decent amount of people, and myself included, for a while, until eventually it kind of clicked with me why exactly this happens. But I will see you guys in the next one. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye, guys.